Hello, everybody. Welcome to the September Prestige Global Meeting Sources Education Webinar Series, where we explore topics to empower you with knowledge and tools to thrive in your career and even your life. I'm Sasha Andreev. I'm going to be your host today as we explore today's topic, mega trends impacting incentives and recognition. Now, if this is your first time here, we're so happy to have you. And if you've been with us before, welcome back. We're so glad that you are here. Now, at Prestige, we provide full service meetings and event support for event planners. We make our clients' lives easier with site selection, event logistics, housing and flight management, creative marketing, and personalized on site support. We collaborate with our global network of hospitality partners, all for your success. And this webinar series is part of our mission to keep you informed and empowered. So we have been drawing from our vast network of professionals and invite guests who can share their expertise on the various aspects that affect your professional and, yes, sometimes even your personal lives. So let's meet a few of those friends now. I would like to introduce the first of our presenters, well, actually both of them, Stephanie Harris and Patricia Kerr, from the Incentive Research Foundation. Let's start with talking a little bit about Stephanie Harris. Stephanie is the president of the Incentive Research Foundation, IRF. Prior to joining IRF, Stephanie was part of the American Express Meetings and Events leadership team and was VP of Brand Marketing and Strategy at Merritt's. She serves on the Board of Events Industry Council, where she's chair-elect. She's a frequent speaker and has been honored by Smart Meetings, American Express, Eventex, and North Star for her contributions to the industry. And fun fact, during her time at Amex, she created the Global Meetings Industry Forecast, which has now become an industry bellwether. Stephanie, that is so many incredible things on your resume. Welcome to the webinar.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
All right, before the presentation, we should introduce your co-presenter, and that is Patricia Kerr, who is AVP of Meeting Management and at Nationwide Insurance and a 25-year veteran in corporate meeting and conference management. She's a past member of the FICP Board of Directors, serving as its chair in 2009, and has been recognized for her expertise in strategic-driven event leadership. She has been named a change maker by Corporate Meetings and Incentives twice in her career, and she has served on the MPI Executive Advisory Council. And finally, she is proud to serve on the Board of Trustees for the IRF. Patricia, welcome to the webinar as well. It's so great to have both of you here.
Thanks, it's great to be here.
Well, let's start right away chatting about what the IRF is. You two are so accomplished, bring a vast array of knowledge from different parts of the industry. Stephanie, why don't you tell me a little bit about who the IRF is and what they do?
Absolutely. The IRF is a foundation that really exists to educate, empower, and inform people about ways to maximize their investments in incentive and recognition and reward programs for employees and channel partners. Our entire mission is really to make sure that people know the best possible way to utilize these incredible investments. And we love doing it.
Awesome. Well, and I know, Patricia, you are coming to us from Nationwide Insurance, but you are on the board of IRF, and you have been a true corporate end user and sort of really utilized the benefits of it. So can you talk a little bit about how the IRF has helped you and how it could probably help everyone watching today in their own, I guess, in their own worlds?
Sure. I'm sure we have all heard the statement, data is king. And to have that elusive seat at the table, to be able to speak to your senior leaders about the trends, about some of the things that we're going to talk about today, and really move the needle and influence decisions and create strategy around incentives. The research that the IRF produces gives you that. And I've certainly used it in so many different ways, encourage my teams to use it. And we have been able to influence and change strategic programs and grow sales, grow culture because of the research.
Awesome. And you obviously are on the board, so you work closely with Stephanie. And I'm really excited to hear what you guys have to say, because obviously we're in a fast-changing world. Before we begin, I just want to remind all of our viewers that, first of all, the chat function is open. So keep those fingers handy because Patricia and Stephanie will be posing some questions to you and will be asking for responses. So it will be really helpful for the presentation today. Now, if you do get a question during the presentation, we encourage you to use the Q&A function that's at the bottom of your screen. That way we can log your question and then pose it to our speakers after the presentation. And also a reminder that this presentation, as always, is recorded and will be made available for viewing on the Prestige YouTube channel, so you can reference it or share it with a colleague who wasn't able to make it. With all of that said, Stephanie, Patricia, take it away. I'm excited to hear what you say, and I'll see you after the presentation.
All right. Here we go. Let's dive into our mega trends. First and foremost, these are a few of the studies that we'll be citing today. Everything that we'll talk about today, any study that we cite, is available on the IRF website. Because we're supported by our incredible, generous industry partners, everything's available to anyone at no charge. So
And it looks like Stephanie's connection might have paused. So we're
substantial influencer on our industry. We're arguably the most unstable I think we have been since World War II. Upheaval continues, uncertainty reigns. 25% of the world right now is impacted by war, and 49% have headed to the ballot box in the last 18 months. That is a lot of instability and a lot of change. Destination choice, supply chains, visa and immigration policies, tariffs and currency volatility all have a direct impact on our industry. So PK, let's talk about what we're seeing.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest things that came out of the most recent Incentive Travel Index, or you'll hear us refer to it as ITI, we're seeing where personal safety is the biggest destination disqualifier among buyers. Geopolitical influence is in the top 3. And while these are probably not new factors in the consideration set, what is really of note is the decision-making process now for destinations. Security involvement now is in the sourcing process. They are in the planning process. Decisions are not being made without their input. It was, I would say, even 2 to 3 years ago, it was a reactive conversation with our risk and security teams. That now is a total 180. We are having those conversations at the outset. We're also just not talking about personal safety. We're talking about brand safety and reputational risk. We're talking about social media. Are there destinations that we would love to go to, but we say, you know what, we don't want to take that risk? So it is changing and evolving on a daily basis. But personal safety and geopolitical factors are no longer maybe 9 and 10, they're 1 and 3.
Yeah, it's, you talk about the kind of cross-border issues and evaluating destinations. When we asked people what cross-border logistical issues have impacted their programs, you see the responses here. Last-minute shifts in security restrictions have impacted more than half of our respondents. Moving goods and visa delays have been impacting a third of the respondents, and round out the top 3. Fully 21%, I know we kicked this off with geopolitical heaviness. Fully 21% of our respondents have had no major issues. So my wish for all of you is that you're in that 1/5 group. But take a minute and share in the chat if you've been impacted, by any of these things, whether it's changes in import-export requirements, compliance barriers, language barriers, visa delays, etc., just drop in the chat if any of your programs have been impacted by any of those elements. All right, PK, back to you.
Well, I think there is some great news here as we come out of some of these risks and some things that maybe, we're not sleeping at night because of them. The great news is that 63% of our buyers are telling us that they are looking for new destinations. They're looking for innovation. They know that we know our attendees want access to experiences that they cannot do on their own. I always talk about experiential differentiation. It's those wow moments. Those are things that build brand loyalty. They drive sales and NOI. They enhance your company culture. And so this is, I think, coming out of all of this, we're still looking at the bread and butter of incentive and recognition. And we are looking for those new destinations. It's not changing that appetite for new and innovative. We just need to make sure that they're a little bit safer.
Love that and agree completely. We're going to shift to our next topic, which is generative AI. It's clearly having an impact both on our personal lives and on our professional lives. And look, with the workforce shrinking, it's critical that we find efficiencies and that we find ways to utilize AI within incentives, rewards, and recognition. So let's take a look at how people are using it today and discuss some cautions, might even drop a hot take in here. PK, over to you.
It's probably no surprise that 61% of our audience is using it for content creation. Whether it's editing an email, whether it's the description of an excursion that's on your mobile app, it really is making our lives easier and better. Destination research, 51%. I was actually surprised that number was as low as that. I thought it would be higher. Program design, scenario modeling. There's just so many potential efficiencies and insights where AI is concerned. When you think about data, there's a great program out there called Chat with Your Data. You can put a rooming list against a travel manifest and identify in 30 seconds what the differences are, finding those gaps. Recommendations on role structure and modifications on programs, 34%. Communications to our participants, 32%. I would love to see in the chat, how are you using AI? I think we can all learn from this emerging technology, right? And it's not going away. So how can we learn from each other? So I'd love for folks to throw some ideas in the chat of how they're using AI over and above what the research is showing us.
Yeah, I think the more we are sharing with each other, the better and more efficient, and the more we'll find the right uses for AI. I just saw someone drop in, they're using it to clean up messaging. I draft a lot of things and then send it up to our AI friends and help them make me sound a little bit smarter. So, this is the hot take portion of the webinar where I talk about HI and AI. And if you were at the Invitational, if you've heard me speak almost anywhere this year, this is my official soapbox moment. So I believe that as we become increasingly mistrustful of what's in our email, what's in our social feeds, what's in our text messages, that HI, human interaction, has more power within our industry than AI. We are uniquely positioned in our industry because we are 100% focused on people, on creating experiences, on creating magic, moments, as PK said earlier. Like, this is what we're doing. Um, to me, AI is great as an enabler in our industry, but it's not a replacer. And I really encourage people to rely on the HI in our world. It's sometimes faster and more efficient to pick up the phone and have the conversation instead of going back and forth. And I think in our quest for efficiency, we may be missing out and losing some of those opportunities. So that's my HI over AI soapbox.
We talk a lot, Steph, around AI is the tool to help create the solution. It is not the solution.
Yep.
It can help you get there maybe quicker, maybe more economically, but it's not the solution. We can't lose this.
Mm-hmm. People are everything in this industry.
Yes. Well, let's talk about another mega trend, and that is sustainability and climate action, and they both remain top priorities. What is interesting here is where we're really seeing this as influencers is in the European and non-North American market. The US, probably more so than Canada, is lagging behind. And so it's really important to understand your organization, your culture, where your senior leaders sit as they define their priorities in this space. There are certainly some companies where they are paying more attention. What we are seeing is that budget in North America is overtaking environmental considerations. Is that right? It's personal opinion, but we certainly know that in the European, in EU countries, these items, and you see them here on this slide, are really important in the European network. And if you're dealing with, companies, planners in Europe versus in the US, this absolutely needs to take priority in the conversations that you're having with those customers.
Yeah, I completely agree. And this is actually from the Incentive Travel Index 2024. So today you're getting some previews of the 2025 index that officially launches at IMEX. This happens to be from our 2024 index. We change questions year to year. And while we'd love to leave everything in and ask you all everything, that is a long survey already. So we kind of swap topics in and out. But in 24, we saw that the majority of the individuals that responded see sustainability as a long run challenge. As PK said, there's definitely more concern in short term and more consideration for it as a short term challenge out of European respondents. But the reality is that, when you have a multinational attendee base, you need to be really hyper aware of the choices that you're making. I've made this mistake where I have multinational attendees and maybe made a decision based on budget that I heard a lot about on the back end because it was so important to both our Canadian and our European attendees. So lesson learned, but it is important to pay attention and know your audience.
And this slide really just clearly articulates exactly what we're talking about. Look at the difference in percentages in between Western Europe and North America. And not only on, ESG and lower carbon footprint, but on those diversity, equity, inclusion considerations. Those are massive changes and differences. And to Stephanie's point, when you have a multicultural audience, finding balance is going to be vital for success.
Yeah. And it's a hard thing to do.
Yes, it is.
Another megatrend that makes our choices very difficult and interesting is the evolution of consumer values. And I think a lot of times this gets pointed only at the younger generation as the kind of catalyst to evolve consumer values, but we actually see these value shifts happening across multiple generations. It can vary significantly by attendee group. And this is kind of the part of the conversation where we start to talk about how important it is to know your individual attendee groups' values, to know what your qualifiers and your winners really care about, so the decisions that you're making resonate with the people who are actually on site and attending the programs.
We talk about that, and you'll hear, I think persona is somewhat of a term that we're hearing a lot about. And when you look at your audience, it's no longer a singular persona. It's understanding all the different components of your audience. And we know, 67% of younger generations are causing disruption, retooling of incentive programs. I personally don't think it's a bad thing. Disruption can be really good. We're seeing that our younger generations want to be more adventurous. We're balancing that against risk. The addition of gamification in some of our programs. We know that the younger generation, and I think this is I love this point, they have a shorter attention span. So we're introducing a lot more TED Talk type of formats to deliver information. But what we're seeing is our older generations who are attending those same meetings are going, oh my gosh, I love this. Why didn't we do this before? And there was really more of a cultural difference that if you went to one of these programs, this is the way it was, and you sat there and you took it and you didn't provide feedback. Now we're having some of these older generations say, oh, I really love what these guys are doing. Continue to challenge the norm, continue to introduce, different concepts, different ideas, and let them resonate across your entire audience to see, what bubbles to the top. What do you continue to do? Where do you need to add a little bit more, differentiation, a little bit more choice, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But it's a disruptor, but I really think it's a great one.
I love that, PK. I completely agree with you. I think we are seeing innovation that's maybe driven by that's desired by everyone. So love, love, love that. And planners are seeing the impact. So when we asked in the index this year whether or not people agreed with these statements, so 56% of our respondents agreed that younger generations of qualifiers are more likely to refuse an incentive trip if it doesn't align with their personal values. That is a big number. And it makes knowing your audience's values even more important to invest in a program and ultimately have people feel like they can't or shouldn't go because of destination content, whatever it is, concerns. That's a big caution. Just 19% agree that traditional incentive travel is irrelevant to younger qualifiers and will become obsolete. I completely look at that statement and go, we did a study a couple of years ago that said these younger generations are more motivated by incentive travel. We were talking about this as we gathered before we went live on the webinar. Instagram has inspired people. They want to travel. They want to see things. That's a good thing. And it makes incentive travel high value. So I was really thrilled to see that number as a lower number. And I think it's accurate to say that incentive travel is here to stay, and it is inspiring and motivating. We just have to be thoughtful about how we're reflecting back the values of the attendees.
And that's a great segue to our next megatrend, and that is around the power of choice and authenticity. As Stephanie said, people are on social all the time. They're watching influencers. And what we're seeing is the importance of cultural authenticity. And what I like to say, and it was a term that I heard very recently, we want to create experiences that allow people to be travelers and not tourists. Travelers experience. Travelers want connection to the culture. They don't want the theme park version. They don't want to just go and see and tick the box and say, I went there. They want to go. They want to meet people. They want it to be authentic. They want to have that cultural experience. And so, it's as we're designing programs, and we talk about the persona, we talk about the audience and knowing them, that is not generational. This is not around simply a younger generation. This is, I think, truly transcending the entire audience population. I'm insurance and financial services. We are traditionally a risk averse, older demographic. And yet the things that we're implementing in our programs and our incentives are so vastly different than what we were doing 5 and 6 years ago. And most of that is truly aligned to this cultural authenticity.
So I would love to dive a little more into the shifting workforce, because look, the shift's been underway for a while now. We're seeing it take hold more as more boomers retire and Gen Z's coming in a really big way. I think, again, survey your audience. If you see demographic shifts, surveying your potential qualifiers can really enlighten and inform decisions. It's even more important if your decision makers, your CEO, look different from the majority of your qualifiers. That's where having data, that's where having stats can make a really big difference. And I'm curious among the audience, how many of you are seeing or have seen substantial shifts in the makeup of your program qualifiers, of the people attending your incentives? And does it happen in one industry, over another, if you're seeing those shifts happen? I hear a lot about it in tech, but I hear about it less in some other industries. I'm wondering if that's true for the people out there today.
Well, and to further that conversation, Stephanie, one of the things that we're seeing, and certainly, as I mentioned at the beginning, using IRF research, the domino effect of this shifting workforce and how we're designing just not specific incentive programs, this travel program or what the excursions look like, but the entire incentive platform.
Yes.
For example, we had a program long-standing. This program's been around for 20 plus years, and we knew we needed to make changes. It was a single travel program that is now a 3-tiered program. The base tier, more aligned to the demographic of that audience. They tend to be younger. They're newer in their career. They're striving to get to the next level. But that tier is now a merchandise catalog. It includes some travel components in it, but then we have our tier 2. That's that traditional incentive program. But we still need to incentivize those top performers. And so now we have a tier 1. They're getting additional rewards. They're getting business class airfare instead of economy airfare to the travel program. they're getting additional gifting, they're getting an additional night. So really looking at how we can broaden the reach of these programs and use the data, use the generational and workforce changes to drive meaningful change in incentive platforms. And we're seeing it. We made those changes at the end of 24 for the first program in 25, and we have the sales results from those. The numbers are staggering. We're talking a 250% increase in actual volume based on this new program. It's exceptional, but it's the IRF research is out there, folks.
But kudos to you for seeing the need for change and working to drive that. I think we see it in the types of rewards that are offered, in programs being paced where quarterly becomes more important than annual, to keep, as you said earlier, it's not just the keynote that needs to be shorter. It's a lot of things that need to be shorter. Exactly. To maintain attention. So kudos to you for making that change. I think another impact in this area is actually to our own industry. So we know that attracting and retaining talent within our own space is a major concern. We did a report called The Future of Incentives. We saw a huge lack of awareness of this industry as a career opportunity. And I can say, as somebody, my daughter started working in the industry, her friends are like, how do I get a job in that industry? And what is that industry? People don't know that it exists. So we have now partnered with Site to design a program to help raise awareness about incentives, both as a career, because that's really important for the long-term health of our industry, but also as a major driver of business results. PK, 250% increase in sales. Like, these are the things we need to be out talking to the next generation of business leaders about, so that when they're taking on their roles, their first thought is, what do incentives look like around here? How do I use them to boost productivity, to boost sales, etc.? And the good news is, you out there today can participate in this campaign.
Absolutely. So if you click on this QR code, you will gain access to an editable deck, and you can bring it into university classes, and just not hospitality classes, but accounting, marketing, exactly what Steph was talking about. And, we're really excited about this. There's great potential. And all of you, go back to your schools, your alma maters, where your kids go, and you can volunteer to be a guest lecturer and present our incentive curriculum.
So I know we're running short of time because Sasha has appeared on the screen. Yes. So we're going to wrap up our last mega trend quickly here, and that's economic uncertainty. And, this is at an all-time high, and there are loads of implications for incentives. I think we did a good job in 2020 of getting more access to the C-suite and being able to tell that budgetary tale of the positive impact of incentives. So PK, with limited time, I'll hand it to you for some stats.
Sure. This one in some ways is really self-explanatory, right? Cruises and all-inclusive experiences really do two things. One is the budget. You really are able to narrow down your spend. They do tend to be a little less expensive, but there's more guarantee. There's less variables here. If you're at an all-inclusive and you buy the bar package, you're not worried about, is someone going to have one drink or three drinks? You are guaranteed in your food and beverage prices, which we know is a huge line item. The other thing that we really haven't talked a lot about that I will say here is, we know that free time is becoming increasingly important to all audiences. And this platform, these platforms of event types also lean into that.
Perfect. The last pitch I'll give is for our top performing companies report. This is brand new data that's out, and it really is great data to use in conversations with your C-suite to show them that companies who are the top performers in their industry invest more in incentives, invest more in rewards, invest more in their employees. There are both overarching data sets on this, and then there are data sets in 3 industries, manufacturing, automotive, finance and insurance, and tech. So avail yourself of this data and look at it relative to your programs and bring it into the C-suite. It can make a big difference.
And that is the end of our presentation. No, as Stephanie mentioned at the beginning, please go to our website. All of the research that we've referenced here is on the website. It is free. And there is a plethora of other studies and white papers, et cetera, that are out there. So, and if you have any questions about the research that's there, you can always reach out to us.
All right, Sasha, over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that presentation. A lot of info. Obviously, it seems like we're talking about generational changes in the workforce. We're talking about geopolitical changes. We're talking about economic changes. And since we have a few minutes, I encourage everyone who is watching the webinar to, use the chat function to write your questions. We can toss them right out to our presenters here. But a question that did come up while you were speaking is that when and how can planners participate in the next Incentive Travel Index survey?
So the Incentive Travel Index, we just got the data back in from this year. It is going to be launched at IMEX. So we'll be doing presentations at IMEX. For the survey itself, those open in the spring. So for the 2026 Incentive Travel Index, will open at IMEX Frankfurt. You have live opportunities to take it. If you attend the IRF's Invitational, you have a live opportunity, but links will be everywhere across socials, through email lists. So yes, look for it again in the spring, but it is closed for 2025. And thank you to everybody who did participate this year. We had more than 2,000 responses.
That's amazing. Well, I hope everyone who's watching will be on top of that. Can you talk a little bit about the trends that are happening in destination choices?
Oh, this is another Incentive Travel Index moment. So, the most interesting thing I think that we saw in 2025 relative to destinations over kind of 23 and 24, pretty consistently, it was like globally people are using, destinations kind of close to home were the name of the game. In 24 for North America, we saw Caribbean as number 1, followed by US as number 2, then Mexico, then Western Europe. That had been pretty consistent for a while. In the 25 data, Caribbean is still number 1, but Western Europe and Mexico have jumped ahead of the US, which is now number 4. So we see US dropping from intent to use at like 90 something percent, 95, 96, down to 81%. So we're seeing volume drop in the US. And that's obviously concerning when we see something like Western Europe and Mexico hopping ahead.
Yeah. We talked a little bit before the presentation about how a lot of times budgets stay the same, but the pricing, the inflation is going up. So can you just comment on that a little bit, because it's sort of how to keep up with that? Because obviously, if your budget remains the same and inflation is going up, technically your budget is becoming more constrained as a result.
PK, do you want to talk about some of the choices you've been faced with?
It's a difficult conversation. And some of it is helping our customers, our internal customers, understand the industry. And so, you know, but budgets are tight. And so it's conversations that we're having around number of people versus number of nights versus experience. You can't have all your cake and eat it too. So, how, sometimes we're getting more money. But generally speaking, we are having to make changes within the program. We're hearing that free time is really wanted and needed. That's a huge win, because I can give people an entire afternoon or an entire evening at leisure. They love it, doesn't cost me anything. So we're certainly integrating more free time into incentive programs. We are educating our internal customers. We are using more internal speakers than sometimes external speakers. If we had a program that maybe had 3 external speakers, maybe we're now just having 1 and having more of our executives do, fireside type chats. If we were doing full day excursions, we're doing half day excursions and then an afternoon at leisure. So it is a challenge. And we have, generally speaking, seen flat budgets since before COVID. COVID, as we all came out of COVID, of course, different markets came out faster than others. And so we used a lot of Western Europe. We used a lot of Mexico instead of the US because it was less expensive. Obviously, those days are gone. But trying to find diamonds in the rough is really the name of the game right now. And even if it's meetings, it's looking at tier 2 cities. If it's incentives, it's looking at places that maybe we would not have gone 2 or 3 years ago. But it is a challenge, and I don't think that there is not some brushstroke solution to the economic turmoil that we are in, the uncertainty of the marketplace, which means that corporate budgets are remaining stable. You're not getting more money. And it means just being way more creative in how you're delivering programs.
Got it. We do have a question come in. Do you see group sizes changing a lot? Are very large incentive travel still popular, or are companies making things smaller because of budget concerns?
My experience is smaller. Yeah, and in the index, we do see some shift in those group sizes. I mean, 73% of people this year are reporting that their budgets are about the same or below what they have been historically. So, as PK said, it's kind of something's got to give, right? And where you don't want to sacrifice experience because you want people desperate to earn that program. You want them working those extra hours and putting in that extra effort. And so sacrificing experience becomes a risk, riskier than shrinking the program.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. In the conversations that we're having with our customers, they have all been adamant. We do not want to decrease experience. So how do we find money in other places? And that is by having the qualifications be a little bit tougher, and therefore lowering the number of attendees, making it just more exclusive.
Which makes people potentially work harder to get into that tier.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. This was very enlightening. And I know, Stephanie, that you froze for a second at the beginning. So, but I think you reiterated at the end, Patricia, that basically all of these resources, many of them are free on the website. Can you give us that website one more time out loud?
It is THEIRF, theirf.org. So type that theirf.org in and everything is out there. You can download anything. All of the content is available for free.
Oh,
there you go. Way to go, PK.
All right.
They're just going on the fly.
Yeah, love it.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Have a great rest of your day. And of course, we encourage everybody to get in touch with Patricia or Stephanie using your Prestige contact. Stephanie, Patricia, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
Well, as I said, if you would like to get in touch with Stephanie or Patricia, contact your Prestige account manager. And I want to remind everybody that we do have another webinar coming up on October 23rd, and that is going to be with Steve Enslin from the Hyatt Hotels Corporation. We're going to be talking understanding food and beverage trends, which right now, especially with the pricing that's happening and the various shifts, is probably going to be quite useful. And we are always updating our schedule. We're also taking suggestions at all times. So if you are looking for a specific subject that you want to hear a speaker about, or perhaps you are the expert who wants to speak on something, please scan the QR code to see what we've got coming up and contact the folks at Prestige if you want to get involved. So until October 23rd, thank you so much for watching, everybody, and we will see you next month. Bye-bye.